Hello. Today's video is going to look at injecting some variety into your sentences because this is key to coating your writing in some of that A-star polish. Now, as I'm sure you know, increasingly you are judged on the accuracy of your SPAG, spelling, punctuation and grammar. This accounts for a large chunk of the marks, larger than it used to. So as well as helping you ensure a range in your sentencing, I'm going to support you with accuracy too. Now, if you cock an eye over this unimaginative dross in blue ink here, hopefully you're thinking to yourself, well, I can do a bit better than that, Mr. Taylor. I mean, I'm looking for support at GCSE level here. I'm not at infant school angling for a smiley sticker. But look at this text, which I've obviously dumbed down because it's going to help hammer home a point. I'll read it first. I went to the park, I went on the slide. Then I went to the swings. It was fun. I laughed lots, then I had an ice cream. Now this writing sounds very leaden, repetitive and uninspiring because I'm clinging to that I, then and it school of sentence starting. It's zombie writing. You're kind of sleepwalking through the paragraph. Look at Mr. Taylor down there having a snooze. Bored to sleep. You couldn't wake that man up with a trumpet and a drum. So let's take a simple, inoffensive sentence and give it a bit of an A-star makeover. Kate drank her cocktail. I'm certainly not going to blind you with science. There's no point in me pounding you to death with highfalutin linguistic terms. That doesn't help anyone. But I think it is useful to understand the idea of a main clause. And the sentence, Kate drank her cocktail, that is a main clause because it's a bit of a sentence that can be a sentence all on its own. And very shortly, we're going to be looking at some ways to flesh out this sentence, to develop it and maximise its A-star potential. Now, I'm an English teacher, so on principle, I'm going to try and jazz up the verb. It said, Kate drank her cocktail. I've substituted slurped there. It's a bit more engaging. We can now imagine Kate attacking that cocktail. We've got a sense of her sucking away on that thing like a champ. Oh, hello. Now we've extended that simple sentence, that main clause, with a little bit of extra information. Now we know why she's drinking. And I'm sure nobody's sitting there thinking, oh my God, Mr. Taylor, you should be doing J.K. Rowling's job. What are you doing talking to us about sentence variety and clauses when you should be penning bestsellers? So yeah, the reason I've rolled out this sentence, Kate slurped her cocktail because she was hot, is simply to illustrate the idea of a subordinate clause. And a bit like a main clause, subordinate clause is a term that sounds very la-di-da, but it basically means something quite simple. It just means a bit of a sentence that cannot be a sentence all on its own. You know, it just wouldn't make sense. You'd sound like a proper div. It needs, or it depends on the main clause in order for it to have a place in the sentence. Come on, Mr. Taylor. Even by your lousy standards, that is an awful joke. Just stick to the English teaching, eh? Right then, this is where I start earning my corn, by giving you 4 different sentence starters that you can employ to very engage and effect in your writing. Adverb starter, adjective starter, in-word phrase and prepositional phrase. Now I'm sure there's some egghead looking at this going, actually Mr. Taylor, the correct term is afafafa. I don't care. These are simple names, simple labels for techniques that will allow you to improve and develop your writing through that variety of sentencing. Adverb starters then. An adverb, roughly speaking, is an ly word. Quickly, suddenly, slowly, stealthily. It's a word that describes how something is done. He moved quickly. He ran silently. And you can see here how I've used adverb starters just to inject a little bit of extra detail into my sentences. Quite suddenly, the shooting started. Luckily, the bullets missed. Very noisily, Terry left the pub. Notice also that these 3 sentences, which start with an adverb starter or a subordinate clause, because quite suddenly, luckily and very noisily, they don't make sense on their own, they're subordinate clauses. When the sentence starts with the subordinate clause, I put a comma before I lay on the main clause. It always looks very impressive, I think, if you can remember to do that. Here you have adjective starters. Adjective, as you know, is a describing word. I always think if I can put the word before the term boy, then I know I've got an adjective. The fat boy, the smelly boy, the stupid boy, the jolly boy, the shady boy. You can put it before boy, 99 times out of 100, you're looking at an adjective. So let's have a look at my examples here. Lost and hungry, they raced towards the burger van. Exhausted, Amy crawled into bed. And you can see, can't you, that just like the adverb starters, starting with a subordinate clause, I've always put a comma before launching into the main clause. Lost and hungry, comma, they raced towards the burger van. Exhausted, comma, Amy crawled into bed. In-word phrase. Now take care with the comma here, because if you get it wrong, it can make your sentence sound quite clunky. These two are accurate examples. Laughing, I explained that the crepe was just a pancake. And ramming it into top gear, Grace shot down the track. Now in my first example, you can see that the comma comes immediately after the ing word. Laughing, comma, I explained that a crepe was just a pancake. Ho, ho, ho. In the second example, the comma comes after the word gear. It doesn't come after the ing word, it comes after the ing word phrase. Ramming it into top gear, Grace shot down the track. Because it would sound pretty daft if I said ramming, comma, it's into top gear, Grace shot down the track. That would sound mental, that wouldn't work. So that comma always comes after the ing word phrase. Prepositional phrases are another great way to kick off your sentences. Why have I drawn a shabby looking mouse there? Well, I always think of a preposition, words and phrases like next to, on, under, above, through. I always think of these words as being anywhere a mouse can go. A mouse can go through a hole. It can go over a table. It can go under a chair. So a preposition, as a rule of thumb, anywhere a mouse can go. And preposition, I think the key word there is position. A preposition just gives you an indication of location, where something is located. Look at my examples here. Under the bridge, a troll lurked. On, the light was blinding. Above their heads, the mouse skittered along the shelf. And these examples echo the same rules we've seen at play in our previous sentence starters. After the subordinate clause, the part of the sentence that doesn't make sense on its own, under the bridge, say, you put a comma, and then you roll out your main clause. You'll notice as well, my comma is coming after the prepositional phrase, usually, rather than after the preposition, because under comma, the bridge, a troll lurked, that wouldn't sound right, would it? Under the bridge, a troll lurked, that sounds daft. So make sure that comma goes after the prepositional phrase. Okay then, let's take our new skill set for a spin. We're going to take a reasonable piece of writing, not an atrocious one, and we're going to give it an A-star overhaul, courtesy of some varied sentence starters. So let's go back to our Katie, who it seems has hardly touched a drop of that cocktail. That's the kind of self-restraint we can all learn from. And the task I'll be responding to here, incorporating Katie, is describe a poolside scene. So I'm going to be writing to describe here and using the appropriate techniques. Here's my first draft then. Kate's eyes widened when the waiter put her drink on the table. It was massive. The drink fizzed temptingly. She put her lips to the straw and drank. It was lovely. She felt she had earned this drink because she'd worked hard all year. Now that paragraph is certainly not a howler by any stretch. It's not without charm at all. But there is something a little bit unimaginative and leaden and repetitive about the sentence starters. A lot of pronouns there. It and she, Kate's name, and there's the definite article the there as well. So in the next draft, we're going to see just how wonderful your work looks once you've polished it via some sentence variation. Well, my goodness, there's the money shot right there. Variety in action. I can practically hear the scrape of the examiner's chair as he gets down on his knees to start worshipping me. We'll read this through and you can appreciate via the bold writing where I've injected some sentence variation into these lines and the impact that that's had on my writing. Fizzing away in front of her, the cocktail looked divine. Tall and frosted, it seemed to draw her forward. Suddenly she was quaffing it deeply. Inside her belly, Kate felt that knot of tension relax. Thinking over that joyless job of hers, she realised how much she'd earned this little luxury. And obviously, to compound the A-star greatness of this paragraph, I've made sure that if my sentence starts with the subordinate clause, I whack in a comma before I launch into the main clause. I've done the same for a persuasive task as well. Write a letter persuading the head teacher to extend school holidays. This is my first draft, and then we'll see how that sentence variation galvanises and improves the quality of my writing. Most students have a hunger to succeed at school. Studies suggest 80% of students wish to attend university. A government study recently linked extended periods of rest to high academic performance. This means an extra week's holiday in summer will win record-breaking results for any school brave enough to take the plunge. Fact, your average student succeeds when well rested. Now, as I say, this is certainly not a bad piece of writing, but you'll see in a few moments what it looks like with its facelift. And here we are then. Appreciate how these small but significant changes add to the overall quality of the piece. Obviously, most students have a hunger to succeed in their studies. In fact, studies suggest a staggering 80% of students wish to attend university. Considering a government study recently linked extended periods of rest to high academic performance, an extra week's holiday in summer sounds like a springboard to record-breaking results for any school brave enough to take the plunge. Fact, well rested, your average student thrives. Now then, let's distill this heady cocktail of ideas into 4 bullet points. What have we learned from this video? We've learned that varying your sentences helps to jazz up your writing, really helps you on your way to those highest grades. If your sentence starts with a subordinate clause, you know, that part of the sentence that doesn't make sense as a sentence on its own, then you need to tack in a comma before you put in the main clause. And incidentally, that second bullet point, if you read it through, is structured just like that. Thirdly, this handy list of 4 different ways to kick off your sentences. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There are lots of ways of starting your sentences. But remember that variety in your sentencing and your sentence starters really does mark you out as a more capable, fluent writer. And finally, it doesn't matter whether you're trying to write to describe, write to persuade, write to inform. Varying your sentences is an invaluable asset to your skill set as a GCSE student. And there we are, folks. Let's call time on this thing. Vary your sentences for a bit of that A-star gloss in your written responses.